Hi, I'm Nancy Steenson with Steenson College Coaching, and this is my friend Jack Wang with the Smart College Buyer Program. Welcome to this week's College Planning Tip of the Week. So, Jack, when parents and students are planning the whole college application process and they're thinking about their budget, what they can afford, what other financial factors should they be thinking about?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nancy. Thanks for asking. Um, Oftentimes, the college search process is driven by, as you know, parents and students looking at colleges first and then figuring out the finances afterwards. And I know we've talked about how families really should have a budget or a number in mind that can help shape their search ahead of time because you don't want to look at something that you can't afford. But it really goes beyond that into what some people might think are unique, but are really quite common factors. And it's all based on how colleges look at financial aid, what types of formulas they can use. So, for example, um, if you are a family that, let's say, is relatively low income or middle income, but you have a house with a ton of equity in it, right? Just because you bought long ago and just prices have appreciated, whatever the case may be. Well, for the colleges that do consider the amount of equity in your home, which is a small amount of colleges in the United States, unfortunately, they're among the best known colleges in the United States. But even within that small group, colleges treat that equity differently. Some schools consider the whole amount no differently than if you had that money just in your bank account, and other schools cap it. So, for example, if you are of moderate income, but you have a ton of equity in your house, you might look at the schools that either A, don't count the amount of equity in your house, or B, if you're looking at schools that do count it, you might consider the ones that cap the amount that's counted. All right, so that's a relatively common example. Another example might be like a divorced family. So some schools, the majority of schools, only look at the parent who is filling out the financial aid form. But again, some of these other schools in the country also require parents, the non-custodial parent, to fill out a financial aid form, and colleges can then look at both parents, even though both parents are divorced. So if you're the parent filling out the financial aid form, but let's say your income is relatively low, then you want to look at schools where your ex-spouse's financials won't be considered, right? You might qualify for need-based aid. Again, another pretty common scenario. And then sometimes parents are own a business, right? Um, so the majority of the schools in the country, I should say, use a formula that generally does not count the value of that business as long as you meet certain criteria. And generally means that the family owns 50 or more percent and you have fewer than 100 employees working for you. That's considered a family owned business. But but that family that owns more than 50% and has fewer than 100 employees, that business could be making over, $100 million in revenue a year. But as long as they meet that ownership and employee criteria, then it's a big fat zero in terms of value for the majority of colleges in the country. So there's always these little nuances that, again, I don't want to get into the details here, but can help families get more aid or viewed in a more positive light financially, right, at that particular college. And these are factors that oftentimes family don't consider ahead of time, but really should be considered ahead of time so they can help formulate and guide that college search. Now, again, I'm just going to say that, you do need to still consider, like you talked to families about, the academic factors, the cultural factors, the social factors. And of course, you don't want to ignore those, but these circumstances can help refine that list as well.
So important, Jack. Thanks for sharing that. It sounds like there's a lot more to it than just uh, a a tuition, room and board number and whether or not one can afford it. So thanks so much for sharing all of that. And thank you everyone for joining us today on this week's College Planning Tip of the Week.